wedding's going to be interesting whenever you have one, because you're going to, if you plan on having one, because your whole wedding is going to be like planned with the notion of like this whole thing is just a social contract.
Well, here's the thing. I've worked one wedding out in Napa where I thought it was really cool, because a lot of people like big weddings where it's like, okay, a big wedding for me is any wedding over 80 people. Now, it doesn't seem like a lot because there's a lot of 300, 400 people weddings out there all the time. It's so normal. But if you ever seen 50 people in a room, it's a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So anything over 80 is a big wedding to me. But I worked this wedding out in Napa where it was like a 30-person wedding total. Like, so that's including the guests and the bridal party and whatnot. And what was cool about it was, one, you get to save a little bit money on a smaller venue, but it's more well decorated and well lit. Like there was Edison bulb, like tungsten bulbs everywhere. I was like, dude,
nice.
This is dope. And you know how like there's at big weddings there's typically like the best man speech and the maid of honor speech. Mm-hmm. Well, since there was only 30 people at this wedding, they went around and everybody said something, and I was like, wow,
really cool.
I know. I was like, dude, that's so cool. Everybody shared like a cool memory and like how they connected with the bride and groom at one point in their life, and they shared a story.
Well, yeah. So if you're a 30-person max, if you're invited to that wedding, you have a very close connection with them.
Exactly.
And you probably have some really good stories to tell.
Exactly. And like, just as a videographer, just working it, I was so engaged. I was like, oh, I want to hear that person's story now. Like, it was so cool.
Isn't it weird how when you work weddings, you weirdly get engaged into other people's weddings who normally you would have just had no engagement with them whatsoever? But you like, you start like listening to the speeches and you start like laughing with them, be like, oh, that's so Dan. Like, even though you just met Dan that day.
Classic Dan, being Dan again.
Hey, remember that one time when Dan did that one thing in that story? Yeah, me too. But you get weirdly engaged when you like. I did a wedding not too long ago, and I realized I'm talking about a lot of weddings I did when I say I don't do weddings. I don't do weddings. Don't hire me for your wedding. I don't do weddings. But I did this wedding not too long ago, and I knew the people, but it's like I didn't know them well enough to where if I wasn't working the wedding, I would have been invited. I definitely would not have been invited to this wedding if I wasn't working it. That's the only reason why I was there. But like every time I hear about the wedding, I get a sense of pride. Like, oh yeah, I was at that wedding. Like I get a sense of pride. Like even though like I wasn't invited, I was being paid to be there.
Oh man, you're like, oh, you weren't invited to that wedding? I mean, I was there.
They paid me to be there.
Yeah,
but it was that's weird. Like after being involved in so many different weddings, whether being in the wedding party or working the wedding, or helping plan the wedding or whatever, like my wedding, whenever I do have one, better be flawless because I have a lot of experience.
No, dude, that's exactly what I'm saying too. Like, for example, like I don't know, I want to edit my own wedding video, but at the same time, I want to have like 6 shooters there. It's like getting different angles and like when I'm mic'd up, I need to have 2 sources of audio mic'd up to me alone. Like like I need backup audio, okay? You know what I mean?
Dang.
Like it needs to be a production. Like I want my own light. Like a lot of times wedding ceremonies you notice are in the middle of the afternoon, and that just looks that was like terrible lighting, right? You already know, right? There's shadows under your nose, under your eyes. I need a bounce light out there or something. or we need like a giant diffusion panel, right? Just diffusing that sunlight, make everything look soft.